Yeah, morning and welcome back to the second hour of Sunday Supplement. So much more to talk about this morning, including the Premier League title race, Kobbie Mainoo's future at Manchester United, and the Formula One title decider, which gets underway in Abu Dhabi in just a few hours' time. Joining me to discuss it all, Jonathan Luke, sports writer and opinion columnist for The Guardian, Dan Kilpatrick, news editor at The Athletic, and James Olley, senior football writer for ESPN. Okay, we've been saying we're going to cover this for the entire programme, but time has been catching us up. But let's talk about the title race and what looks like a significant day at Villa Park. Arsenal's second Premier League defeat of the season after an 18-match unbeaten run in all competitions. James Olley, you were there at Villa Park. The Mirror says, stop being villains. Was this a case of Aston Villa being very good, a congested fixture list catching up with Arsenal, an injury crisis at the Emirates, or something more deeper to worry about for Arsenal?
Yeah, all of the above, I think. I mean, it comes at the end of a run for Arsenal, a 2-week run where they've had, Tottenham, Bayern Munich, Chelsea, Brentford, and then this game, and they've been losing players sort of consistently through that period, and it was a 6th different centre-back pairing that they've used this season. And when you take out Gabriel and Saliba from that team, they're obviously not as strong defensively as they would be otherwise, and they're not as resilient, and they don't have the platform to go and grind out the results as they have done up until now. And so I think this result has been coming. I thought Villa were brilliant yesterday. They obviously played in midweek too, but they kept going. And Buendia, I've not heard a noise in the stadium that loud for a while. It's just a fantastic moment at the end of the game there. And yeah, look, I mean, for Arsenal, I think I went on their pre-season tour to Singapore and Hong Kong, and they signed Gyökeres while they were on that tour, and they talked about how, both sort of publicly and behind the scenes, that they were going to have to sort of slightly change the way they play. They were going to have to be more direct. They're going to have to play to Gyökeres' strengths and really become a team that's more clinical. I think they had 13, 14 draws in the Premier League last year, and they're going to need to score more goals, and that's how they're going to win the league. What they've done this season isn't really that. And I thought it was quite significant that Merino started yesterday ahead of Gyökeres when Gyökeres was back fit. They're almost playing like they were last season, where defensively they're very, very good, really, really solid, and then they're trying to nick a goal, whether it's a set piece, whether one of their attacking players can come up with something. And when you're constantly on those fine margins, sometimes they go against you, as they did yesterday. And when that defensive level drops and they can't rely on Gabriel and Saliba and a midfield that looked a little bit tired just because of how many games they played of late, they start conceding chances. And they were conceding an awful lot of chances against Villa yesterday, which is something they weren't doing sort of 6-8 weeks ago. They went to Fulham, Trossard scored again that day. They went 1-0 up early in the second half. Not only did Fulham not score, they didn't have a shot of any description. That's how good they were defensively. It wasn't that they were rolling teams over 3, 4, 5, 6. They were winning those tight games because of that defensive shape and that defensive solidity. So because they don't have it at the moment, they're in that danger zone where games could go against them. They could have won it yesterday, they could have lost it. They ended up losing it. They've won a lot of games like that this season. And while they're in that kind of danger zone of not being able to kill teams off and being a bit vulnerable at the back, they do look a little shaky at the top of the league.
Jonathan, we live in a world where one result, the title race is on, another result, or Arsenal are going to walk away with the title. It's picked up on by George Sims at The Observer. He says the entire Mikel Arteta project is a victory for long-termism in a mire of myopia, and losing that perspective, becoming trapped in the same game-by-game chaos cycle as their peers is their greatest threat. Has he got a point there?
Yeah, very talented young prose artist is George. I rate it very highly. Mire of myopia. I didn't see anything from Arsenal yesterday that didn't make me think they were going to win the title. I mean, I thought the pace of play was good. I thought the energy was good, and like James was saying, they were conceding a couple more chances because they don't have that defensive platform. But it was still a cash score, I think, from a deflected cross, and then it's a goal mouth scramble in the last minute. I think these things happen. But I would turn it around and say if you're one of Arsenal's title rivals, if you're a City or a Chelsea, well, you might even say Aston Villa now. If you're not taking points off Arsenal at this stage of the season, when they are missing their 3 central defenders, when they're missing Gyökeres for long periods, when they have this run of fixtures, when they have a really tough run of away fixtures they've had in this autumn, then frankly, when are you going to take points out of them? So I think the fact that Arsenal still clearly have so much more to give makes them really strong title favourites still, in my opinion.
Yeah, if their attack clicks, they win the league. There's no doubt about that. They're the best squad, as Johnny says. They're top of the league without having played that well for most of the season, and they've suffered all these injuries. If they get that squad fully fit, then they're still favourites. They're still clear at the top. There's no reason for them to panic. But there is now encouragement for the chasing pack that I don't think was there probably 3 or 4 weeks ago.
There's been no title since 2004, famously, Dan, and some have said that could potentially impact Arsenal psychologically because they've had a few near misses. George Sims actually goes the other way. He says, for all the obvious gags about Arsenal's recent penchant for collapse, their experience in these scenarios can only help.
Yeah,
Which way would you go on that?
Well, I think it'd be silly to say that the fact that Arsenal finished second 3 years in a row is not going to potentially play on their mind if they get in a tight title race. And I think I'm not looking at Villa as title contenders, I've got to say. I think they've been on a brilliant run, and I think they'll be in the top 4, but I don't think they're going to push for the league. But I think City are obviously the ones. City have never lost a title race under Pep Guardiola. When they've not won the league, it's when they've not been in a title race at all. So they have got that experience. They've got the manager who knows how to get them over the line and knows how to manage those occasions. And I think they've historically tended to peak or hit their stride in kind of January, February. And particularly given they're in the Club World Cup this summer, it wouldn't be a great surprise if they continue to kind of build a head of steam and improve. Plus, they've got Rodri to come back. So while I agree with these guys, I think Arsenal are still the favourites. I think that they have had a wobble, and I think they now will be kind of inevitably looking over their shoulders at City because they've got that experience, and Arsenal have been in these 3 tight title races and finished second in all 3 of them. So I feel like this was a significant week, and I think that the Chelsea game was the one for Arsenal. Playing for that long against 10 men. At the time, you kind of came out and you're like, is that a good point? Is that a solid point against a title rival, keeping Chelsea at arm's length, or is it a big opportunity missed? And it's easy to say with hindsight, but it looks like the latter, I think, particularly given Chelsea have wobbled in the last couple of games.
And it's the 3rd time this season that you could say they've done that against the big teams. You think about when they went to Liverpool in August, vulnerable, tight game, lost 1-0. City came to the Emirates. City again were vulnerable, not in a great place. Losing 1-0, okay, they equalised right at the end, but they didn't win that game. It might not matter because I'm not sure the league is that strong this year in terms of I don't think you're going to need 95 points, maybe not even 90 points to win the title. They might still be able to beat all of the so-called sort of lesser lights and still win the league.
I don't see who's going to push them.
Yeah.
Like they lost to it like a generational City team. They lost to an incredible Liverpool team last season. I don't see who's going to raise that level and push them to 85, 90 points. I don't think City, Chelsea, absolutely not. I think Villa, like Dan says, are playing really well at the moment, but just don't have the. I don't think they have the depth to cover it.
But on Villa Arsenal, they have an incredible record under Emery. I think 2 years ago, Arsenal lost 5 games, finished 2 points behind City, but lost twice to Villa. Last season, that 2-2 draw felt quite significant. That was, I think, a point in January where Liverpool kind of opened the gap to 5 or 6 points. And they've got to play Villa again before the end of the year, if I'm not wrong, late December, I think it is, and then one of those quirks of the fixture calendar. And you wouldn't bet against Emery beating them again. So that suddenly feels like a hugely significant game, whether or not Villa are still there, just for Arsenal's title prospects.
James, we'll come back to City hopefully later in the programme, but the 2 guys here have actually written off Villa with regard to a title challenge, but we have to look at what they've been doing. Tom Colomosi was at Villa Park from the Mail on Sunday. He says Villa's improvement is the far greater surprise. Anyone who followed this team during the summer and watched their opening matches would not have believed this possible. They didn't score in the league until midway through September. They're 3 points from their first 5 games.
Yeah.
They've had 27 from a possible 30 in their last 10. Can they challenge?
Yeah, I mean, Tom's a great writer, very shrewd observer as well. And I think it was September the 28th before they won a game, before they won a Premier League game. I mean, remarkable run. Can they challenge? You'd have to look at the squad and think they probably need in January a bit more depth. You do wonder with the European competition whether that be a factor, but I suppose the only thing you can say is that if we're all sat here collectively saying that the league's not as strong as it has been in previous years, and that you might not need to get to 90, 95 points, that does bring teams that have not got anywhere near that in the past more into the picture. At home, they can beat anyone. I'm not sure about them away. I just sort of feel as though they're not going to have the legs in terms of the squad depth to be able to compete with Arsenal.
If they weren't in Europe, I mean, it's a big if, but if they weren't in Europe and they could play more or less the same team every weekend, I think it might be a different question.
Yeah.
Sam Dean from the Sunday Telegraph says that Villa have the momentum. Look, I know if you were to compare it to maybe a Leicester City,
Leicester won it with 81
points. Is it comparable?
Leicester won it with 81 points. I don't think 81 points is going to win you the league this season. I think like Villa should definitely be aiming for the top three. I think that like Champions League football next season, it's a real, and that should be an incredible achievement for them. I think talking about the title, it's a little bit premature. I don't think they've shown, they haven't really shown their chops in a title race before. Like Dan says, they have Europe to contend with. I think Villa fans should just be
maybe no scar tissue for Aston Villa there.
Yeah, but possibly. I mean, they have a really like a brilliant core of really great professionals. Whether they have like that, the X factor players who will win you tight games in April and May, that's what title winning teams need. I don't know, but I don't want to do Villa down because they're playing like incredible stuff, and I think finishing top 3 or 4 would be an incredible achievement for them.
I think it's big for them that Watkins scored a couple against Brighton midweek. So I think he only scored 2 in 20 odd games before that. So if he gets back in form and starts really scoring again, then that would be a huge thing for them.
Yeah, attention for Arsenal will go to the Champions League in midweek and the Europa League for Aston Villa.